In this country, when you're hurt, what we do is very unique and it's beautiful. It's really unknown what is the value of this case where somebody died, they died very quickly, and then the sister who's surviving observed this person die. I wanted to be a storyteller. I really just loved films. I loved telling people stories. So that's what I wanted to do.
Welcome to Celebrating Justice, presented by the Trial Lawyers Journal and Cloudlex, the next-gen legal cloud platform built exclusively for personal injury law. Get inspired by the nation's top trial lawyers and share in the stories that shape our pursuit of justice. Follow the podcast and join our community at triallawyersjournal.com. Now here's your host, editor of TLJ and VP of Marketing at Cloudlex, Chad Sands.
Welcome back, friends, to Celebrating Justice. In this episode, we sit down with Adam Wolk, chair of the trial department at Liakis Law in New York City. Adam's path to becoming a trial lawyer took many unexpected turns, from working in film production to becoming a fisherman to driving a cab in Montauk. His resilience in overcoming both personal and professional challenges has shaped him into the formidable presence he is in the courtroom today. To get to the stories, I asked him, why did you want to become a trial lawyer?
I didn't grow up thinking I wanted to be a lawyer. My dad's a lawyer. He does real estate transactions. My grandfather was some type of lawyer. He passed when I was young. I grew up wanting to play baseball for the Yankees, obviously. But then I wanted to do film and TV. I loved movies. I was the president of my film club in high school. I went to a standard liberal arts college. I went to Colgate, got what I like to call my double BS major, my major in political science and philosophy, religion. And after that, I said, you know what I want to do? I want to write and direct movies. I wanted to be a storyteller. I really just loved films. I loved telling people stories. I went to the New School. I went there at night. It was a 2-year program that I did in 1 year. And it was learning how to tell a story, to write a screenplay, and also to use film. It's probably the last year they ever actually used film. Everything's digital now. Nonetheless, I shot a short movie on film. So I did that at night. And during the day, I worked at a law firm, actually. I worked as a technology assistant at a law firm, a big law firm, Kramer and Levin in New York City. During that time, I spent my summers working in Montauk. Throughout college and into my time in film and TV, into my young 20s, mid-20s, actually, I was at first a fisherman out in Montauk. I worked on the fishing boats. The Lazy Bones is a boat I worked on. I highly recommend it. The Viking Fleet is also a boat I worked on. And, you know, those were half-day, full-day trips where you got to interact with people and teach them how to fish. Great job. Then I became a cab driver out in Montauk. The best, one of the best, other than being a trial lawyer, being a cab driver was just absolutely awesome. I did that for 4 summers, met so many interesting people. This is before Uber. Then I started working in film and TV. And if you know film and TV, you start at the bottom of the barrel, right? So you're the production assistant, a PA, which really means you'll do whatever they tell you to do. So I worked on a couple television shows as a production assistant. I Want to Work for P. Diddy was actually one of them. True Life was one of them. Now, I was behind the scenes in most of this stuff in the sense that I would set up the dining room for food. I would be first on scene to get the garbage. I mean, I really just did the things that needs to get done.
You got to help Crafty set up. You got to put out the chairs for the director and the crew and sweep the floors before they start shooting.
100%. And I'll be honest, I thought it was pretty cool, you know, what I was doing. I was managing to survive in New York City, working as a production assistant on these television shows. And then I got a cool opportunity to be a PA on this film called City Island. It's a movie with Andy Garcia and Julian Margulies. I think this is now 2007, maybe into 2008. And I am the head production assistant on this film.
Big feature.
What?
Like a big feature. You're the head PA on a big feature.
Big feature, real cool. I get a car and everything because I got to be there first and I leave last. My first job was to install 14 air conditioners in the various houses that we were using to film City Island and to house Andy Garcia and Julian Margulies and to make sure they're comfortable. Listen, I'm a lot of things. I'm a fisherman. I'm a cab driver. I'm now an attorney, but I'm a New York kid Jewish, not super handy with my hands other than tying fishing knots. So suffice to say, I was very concerned about installing 14 heavy duty air conditioners. Nonetheless, I was able to find this movie was filmed on City Island. I found an assistant. He assisted me. And I'll never forget my first time I met Andy Garcia is I'm like installing the air conditioning place in the house. I have no shirt on. And I'm a big cigarette smoker back then. I was not the healthiest person in the world. And I see Andy Garcia comes over to me and with the director, and he sees I'm just like, it must be schwitzing and it's been a long day. They haven't started shooting yet. And he sees I'm looking for something in my pockets. I didn't even see him there. I'm just sort of out there after. And he says, well, what you looking for, kid? And I was like, oh, I'm looking for a lighter. And I turn over, it's Andy Garcia. He gave me the lighter. I never gave it back to him, though he did towards the end of filming, asked me for the lighter back. I lost it by that point, so he never got it back. But anyway, I did that. Great experience, but it wasn't giving me what I wanted. And what I wanted was to make enough money where I could be self-sufficient and to somehow get behind the camera and tell stories and direct and move up from the PA who will do anything anybody needs, that will drive late at night,
Yeah.
And the path wasn't a straightforward one. It wasn't happening. And I ended up actually getting an interview for Dog the Bounty Hunter. And it was Dog the Bounty Hunter. He was filming in Hawaii and they were interviewing for production manager. It was a massive jump. One that I honestly was not qualified for. It was going from the PA to managing the production. I'd be in charge of lots of things. And I'll be honest, I didn't think I was qualified for it, but this was the opportunity, right? I was like, I'm going to make this move. I'm going to make this jump. This is going to pay me the money. I'm going to move to Hawaii. I'm going to get this big reality television show. I'm going to be the head guy that runs it. And now my career is going to take off. That was the plan. And, I didn't get the job. I think I made it the second. I was one of the last two people interviewed and I didn't get it. And I remember it bothered me for a bit, but hindsight being 2020, it was very good. As I think I hinted at when talking about my time on City Island, I wasn't the healthiest individual at that point in my life, mid-20s. I don't think going to Hawaii, being overwhelmed by work that I really wasn't prepared for would have been the right thing. So I didn't get it. I ended up getting fired from my job that I was getting all this TV work at. That's a story for another day as well. But at this point now, I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm living in New York City. I've got a few $1,000 in my account. I'm living paycheck to paycheck. And I don't know what I'm going to do with my life, to be honest. So, like any person would, I decided, well, let me go back to school, right? Like, I'll be honest, I didn't know what I wanted to do. My dad's a lawyer. People had always said I was good at arguing. I was like, you know what? I'll go to law school. The real reason I went is because I saw it as I've been working for 4 years. Let me go to school for 3 years. The government's going to pay, right? They're going to pay for my housing. I'm going to get to live in New York City. I'm going to get to school in New York City. They're going to pay for my computer. And I get to go to school for 3 years. And then I'll worry about what I'm going to do with the degree, and let alone paying all this monies back that the government has given me, just to give everybody a time frame. Summer 2009, I think. I make the decision I'm going to study for the LSATs. And I'm going to talk about this because if there's anybody out here listening that didn't do well on their LSATs, persevere and continue pushing. So I'm going to study over the summer. Where do I go that summer? To Montauk to drive a cab. So I go to Montauk, I drive a cab. I never study. I'm working like 6 nights a week.
Smoking cigarettes,
not super healthy, not living the healthy lifestyle. And I go and take the LSATs in, I think it's September they gave it, I remember. And I go and I take it. And I didn't think I did particularly well. But again, I was not the healthiest. I wasn't thinking long term. I was very much like, what's the next move? What am I doing?
What's the next gig? Kind of the PA mindset. Like, what's the next gig I'm going to get? Pay my rent.
100%. And I got the score back. I remember I was back when there was internet cafes. So I went to a Montauk internet cafe on because I didn't work during the day. My cab driving was 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. So I'd sleep till like 2, wake up, walk to the beach, do a little fishing. And I look and I'm like it was like 144 or something like that. I didn't know if that's good or bad, but I Googled it and it was not good. There was very few law schools, in fact, that would even think about you if you had that score. I think most of them were not accredited law schools. Some of them might have had religious undertones. I don't know, but I wasn't any of the ones that I would want to go to.
Right.
So I said, I'm going to take it again, except this time I was going to study. So I went home to Maryland where my family was that fall, studied for 2 months, did the Barbary or whatever it was, if I remember correctly. Didn't do particularly great, but I got a score that got me into law school, and I was happy. So now let's say I think it's January. I'm in law school starting next September, but I don't know what I'm doing for the rest of the 6 months. So I end up going to Colorado. I have a friend from Kramer and Levin, a partner there who knew me, who was on the board of the Ritz-Carlton. And they had a timeshare out there, like a really, really nice hotel where it's like $200,000 per week to stay there. And I was going to be a bellhop. So I do. I drive cross country. I go out there. And again, I've been hinting at a little bit throughout this. I was not a healthy person. I might have had some dependence problems that needed to be addressed, and I was not addressing them. I go out to Colorado. I'm having a great time. I'm skiing. I'm doing the bellhop. Now, this is back when marijuana was not legal as it is today. Now, I was aware that I was going to be drug tested for this bellhop job. I think back of this time and think what I was thinking, not that much really. And I was thinking, I got to Colorado. I met some new people that were also working. And I was thinking that joint looks really tasty. I'm going to smoke some of that joint. And then I had to take a drug test. And a month later, I get a call and they say, Adam, you failed the test. Do you want to retake the test? And I advised them that would be bad for everybody involved. Nobody wants to see, right? Because also I'm coming from New York where it's not legal to Colorado where it's legal. So I don't know what level they had me at when I first got there, but I'm at a higher level at this point.
Right.
So I say, you know what? No, thank you. It's been a great month. I'm going to reassess my situation. And then I remember calling my father in tears, right? I'm a little lost at this point. Sure, I have law school, but I'm in Colorado. I've been fired.
Yeah.
I was doing film and TV. Now I'm not. And I know that I have a dependence problem. I'm not sure if my parents know yet, but I know that I'm things aren't going super well, and going to law school wasn't going to fix it.
Right.
So I go back to Maryland. I go out that summer to Montauk to drive a cab. And at that point, the first week out there, I realized that I'm not doing well. So I call my parents who had hinted at me that they'd always be willing to provide me help. And without going into details, that summer, I go back to Maryland. I get the help I need. And I say, okay, I'm going to law school. And I remember people in the, without going into the details, in Narcotics Anonymous saying to me, Adam, you really shouldn't go to law school now. You just got clean or whatever, and you're really putting yourself in a uncomfortable situation.
Interesting. They were telling you that.
In fact, they actually told me not to go out to Montauk, right? Because I went to Montauk, realized I needed to go to rehab, went to Maryland and did my rehab. And then I was like, now that I'm doing well, I need to go back out to Montauk and drive a cab because I love it out there. I love the fishing. I love the beach. And if I can't stay sober when I'm driving a cab at night and chilling during the day, then how the heck am I going to stay sober when I go to law school and have all this pressure that everybody says? So I say, you know what? Everybody says, don't go back out to Montauk. Don't go to law school. And I say, no, that's absolutely incorrect. I need to go out to Montauk to make sure that I can make it out there, and then I'll be able to go to law school. So I go out to Montauk, had a great summer, worked 2 nights a week. This is like the last hurrah before Uber. So I'm working 2 nights a week, driving people from the surf lodge, making $1,000 a night, setting up all the dates with the girls I'm driving for when I move into the city in the fall and start law school. Not joking. It was great. Right. And knock on wood, it was a good result. I made it and I went to law school. But I do want to make a point that for 5 years after I got healthy, I used Suboxone, which is a medicine that is controversial. And I want everybody to know that if you are dependent on opiates or anything for that matter, there is help. This medicine was a lifesaver for me. I would not be where I am today without it.
And then real quick, the guys, I could see them saying, hey, you shouldn't go step back into driving a taxi in Montauk. You know what I mean? That's not going to be a good environment, you might be exposed to some things. But they actually said you shouldn't be going to law school, which hints that they already knew the substance abuse problems that happen in law school for law students. Do you think they kind of were hinting at that?
I mean, I think that, these people saw me that first summer when I came back. They saw me real low, right? They saw me. I remember I was at this Narcotics Anonymous meeting, and the first one I went to there after entering the outpatient rehab program. And I remember I was there early, and I remember saying, what's crazy is I was just all day waiting for this meeting. This was the meeting I'm looking forward to, and I haven't slept in a day. I'm going through withdrawals, and I went to rehab, and it was a quick turnaround, to be honest. I was in outpatient rehab for 6 weeks. I was going to multiple NA meetings, and once I was on the Suboxone and on the program, I felt ready to push forward.
So you kind of like gave up on the dream of making movies, had some cash from driving cabs all summer, had some dates lined up maybe for fall, and then you step into law school finally. What's that like? And where did you go? Who accepted you?
So New York Law School accepted me. New York Law School is an awesome new law school. It is New York's law school. I'm going to tell you a little bit about law school and how awesome it is, but I just really want to highlight that New York Law School is awesome. They threw me in to internships and externships, which helped me figure out what I wanted to do as a lawyer. Because you think right now, I didn't even know I wanted to go to law school. I'm really going because I don't know what else to do. I know I like to argue, but I don't know what kind of law I'm going to do. My dad was transactional, so I really don't know. So I go to law school. I get an apartment in the West Village, sick apartment, 1 bedroom, Christopher and Waverly. It must have been like a weird real estate year. It's 2010. I don't know how I got it. 1 bedroom, $1,600 a month. That'd be like $3,000 a month now, maybe even more. But anyway, I get the sick 1 bedroom. I can jump on the 1 train, zoom down to New York Law School. So I go into law school, no idea what it's about. I didn't speak to my dad about it. I did no research. I had no clue. I just knew that people said it's hard and you really got to work. And that's what I was like, okay. Oh, and I also knew you needed to get a study group. I remember that you need a study group. So I go to law school, and I'll tell you 2 stories, which sort of, I think, encapsulate my first year of law school. One is, and they'll say this, and I think this, if there's anybody that has any sort of addiction will understand this. When you have an addiction, that addiction takes up your life, right? That is what consumes you, hours of the day, how to get the substance, where you're going to get it from, when it's going to run out, what you're going to do next. When you stop that, you have this huge void, right? Like I used to spend 8 hours of my day figuring out how I'm going to get drugs.
Yeah.
So it opens yourself up for other quote unquote addictions, right? They'll say, don't ever get in a relationship a year after rehab because that'll become the new addiction. Well, I went to law school. I met this really cute girl. I was still smoking cigarettes up then. And her name was Annie. And I met her, and she became my girlfriend. And we were together all throughout law school. And she was an awesome person, is an awesome person, but she also required a lot of attention. And I say that in the best way. And that was good. I needed that. I needed somebody on me, watching me. I needed somebody that I felt I could help. And we pushed through together and went through law school. Eventually, we separated, went our own ways. She's a successful lawyer. But anyway, she was my replacement and law school, because it's lots and lots of work. So in New York Law School, you're put into like a unit of 30 people, a small section. You have some of the similar classes. So I'm put into this section, and I don't really remember the circumstances, but I remember looking around at the 30 people, and there was one guy, his name was Fabio, that I was like, oh, this guy knows what he's talking about. I want to be in a study group with him. So I go up to him after Civ Pro class with Molly Land. And next to him is this kid named Jared. I didn't think that much of Jared at that point. Didn't know him very well, but he wasn't impressing me or blowing my mind.
Not like Fabio.
No, me and Fabio were on that level.
Yeah.
But I could tell when I went over and I said to Fabio with Jared right next to him, let's do a study group. They say do study groups. We should do it. I think you'd be a good member. He was like, yeah. And then he like looks over at Jared. And at that point, Jared's like, can I be in the study group too? And I'm like, of course you can. Of course you can. So me, Jared, and Fabio joined a study group. And then it gets even better. This other guy, I don't remember what his name. I'll call him Mr. Banks. Mr. Banks comes up to me and says, I'm looking for the best of this 30 people. And I think you're it. and I want to create what I call the A-team study group.
Nice.
Back in my mind, I'm like, well, first off, I already have this study group, which I now, in your mind, is probably a B team.
B team.
But you want me on the A team? Yeah, I don't blame you. I like you already because you see what I have to offer, and who doesn't like that, right? So I'm like, cool.
The greatness,
right? Obviously. So I'm like, A team, that sounds good. Okay, let's join it, Mr. Banks. And he brings on, forget, it was another person and this guy named Bobby Carroll. Bobby Carroll, who's now a state senator for Brooklyn. Great guy, good friend.
A-team material. Senator.
A-team material. So we have this first A-team study group with Mr. Banks, me, Bobby, and somebody else who I don't actually remember. And man, this Mr. Banks guy sure could pontificate a lot, but it was not helpful. I remember I didn't know Bobby that well, but we're starting to give each other eyes. Like, what is this guy talking about? Like, why are we here? And what can I do to not be here anymore? You know, I don't want to be here. I can tell you don't want to be here, but I like Bobby at this point. So I'm like, you know what? You would be a good addition. I don't know about this Jared guy, but Fabio's good. You're going to be good. And we'll bring Jared along. I promise, no matter what. So we all joined the study group and it's awesome. We start studying, I guess, like we have all the same classes. So you have all the same exams and exam schedule. We all smoke cigarettes. After class, we would get in one of the rooms in the law school and we would just talk about the topic. We would just go at it and at it and at it and create these outlines. And I'm talking, it was hours at a time. And then on the weekends, we're getting together and it's known. People see us as the study group, right? I'm trying to think. I'm a very intense guy at that point, much more intense than I am now. And I'll never forget being on the study on like the 5th floor, and we're in our study group. It's very clear we are in the stuff. We're studying for exams. We're in it. And this nice person, Lindsay Blackard, comes along and has a question. And listen, me, Fabio, Jared, and Bobby, we talk, right? We talk during class. We're not quiet. So people, even if we don't know what we're talking about, people think we do. So if they have a question, they're going to come over to us and be like, hey, guys, what's this? So it's like maybe this exam's in 2 days. And Bobby and everybody relays this story quite a bit whenever we're together. And he said, we're at the 5th floor and it's like a lunchroom area in New York.
Are you guys like smoking inside? Are people
no,
still
we're not smoking inside, but we did go to that West Village, my West Village apartment one night. And Bobby still tells horror stories. It was like, we're all smoking in the smallest apartment. It's absolutely disgusting. It's like snowing out and the floor is also angled. So every time you sit on the rolling chair, Bobby's like rolling to the window. It's really, really a scene that I think Bobby Carroll can paint perfectly well. But this nice person comes up to us and starts to ask a question. I think she might have gotten 1 or 2 words out, but I knew what she was doing. She was asking us a question. Not having any of that at this moment. So I just put my hand up to her face, looked at her and said, no, walk away. Again, I'm not a mean guy. I didn't mean to be mean. It probably came off super mean. And I think at some point later in my career, I crossed paths with her and I'd be like, remember that time I just like put my hand up to you and told you no? You know, that's like first year law school stuff. That's like if you're in law school first year, trying to survive, figure out what the heck you're going to do, you can understand and relate.
Yeah.
So we joined the study group. We had a great time. I got some good grades and it was a success. I vividly remember, I'm living in the East Village. I've lost my place in the West Village is done. It's in a studio apartment, like smaller than a studio. It's like tiny. And I'm walking by, there was a falafel place and there was a raised pizza. And then you would hit Katz's Deli. And I was walking, there was an ice cream place, Laboratorio del Gelato, that was down at the end of Houston. And I was walking there. I remember passing Ray's and getting the notification that the grades were in. And like, I'm trying to remember if I had to call something or look it up online or whatever, but I got the grades and they were A's, A minuses, and maybe a B plus or something like that. Suffice to say, I got those and that was very reassuring. That was awesome. Fabio tried to break apart the study group, but I said, no, I said, we'll change things. We can't, this is such a solid crew, but we can change things and we can adapt. And we did. And then the next year or the next semester, Fabio reached, same grades as us. And then whenever we happened to be in the same class for the rest of our time there, we would do study groups. So much so that we actually set the curve in our constitutional law. I can't imagine how many other students hated us in that con law class because we would talk. We loved it. It was Professor Francois was the man. It was awesome. But we knew our stuff and we knew it really, really well. And when we all got A pluses, I realized that we just screwed everybody else in our class. What are you going to do? What are you going to do?
You're the A team, the true A team, though, setting the bar.
Setting the bar. So now I'm in law school. A year in, I'm succeeding in law school, right? I'm supporting myself, or the government is supporting me. I'm not asking my parents for money. I'm made it through the first year, which they say is the toughest. And now it's the summer and I need to get an internship. And what I decided, I'm going to get an internship on every opportunity that I can while at law school, because I don't know what I want to do. I was interned at a real estate firm. I interned at a government waterfront commission. I interned at the Brooklyn DA's office. I interned at a variety of places, all to say at year 3, when you're trying to figure out what you're going to do, I knew that I wanted to work at the DA's office. That's what I wanted to do. I really enjoyed my time working at the Brooklyn DA's office as an intern. It seemed one of the few jobs where you're going to get a lot of responsibility at a young age as a new lawyer. And I always was approaching life, but I guess my career path as I value experience over money, at least initially. So I knew you didn't get paid well as a prosecutor, but I wanted to be one.
And do you think that exposure to all those different internships helped clarify your path forward and what you really wanted to focus on?
1000%. Practical experience is the best experience. It's the only way you're going to figure out what you like and what you don't like. And while I found big firm real estate stuff tolerable, and I thought that government work was tolerable, I never loved writing. I like it now more because I use it for something I want to do, which is trials. But generally, writing was not something I wanted to do. Not a big data guy. I'm more a big picture storyteller guy. And I knew what did appeal to me was the DA's office. Again, I didn't know that much, but I knew that's what I wanted to do. So you start applying to all these DA's offices. You apply to Queens, Bronx, Kings, all of them. And it's a really, really, really long interview process. I think back then it was probably the most sought after job, because if you want to get experience and do trials, that or public defender is the place to get the experience. So I apply to all the jobs. I go through all the interviews. Some I make it to the second round, the third round, but I don't get it. It's very frustrating. Neither does my friend Jared. Fabio got it. Fabio got the Bronx DA. Jared didn't get anything. I didn't get anything. And Bobby Carroll, I think, had no interest in being a prosecutor. He was helping his dad out, who did landlord tenant, and he knew he was going to do politics and theater and so on and so forth. So I'm disappointed. Me and
Jared,
we're just like, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? I think I jinxed it too, because it was Jared's birthday in March, and we were waiting to hear if we got the job. So I remember giving him a birthday cake. I lived on Avenue C between 9th and 10th, and he lived on 14th and C. And I walked over there with a birthday cake, and it said ADA Jared Mogul. And then I think 2 days later, he got the rejection letters, or all of them. And I was like, it's my fault. I jinxed you.
So every year you give him that cake still?
Well, no way, because I'm not going to let my friends down. I'm not going to do it. So what happens is I now don't have a job, right? I study for the bar. I pass the bar. And my dad knows a solo practitioner in Long Island that can hire me to do some drafting and whatnot. So I go out there. That's my job. My first job, September 2013. And I'm going out to somewhere in Long Island, the Long Island Railroad, working for this very nice gentleman, Mark Melman, a really good attorney. But I wasn't loving it. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I had this law degree, but I was like, I don't know what am I doing with it? And this is not what I want to be doing with it. There was an election going on in Brooklyn at that point. Charles Joe Hines, who had been the DA in Brooklyn for 40-something years, was running against this individual named Ken Thompson. He was also running against an individual named Abe George. Abe George, I had been introduced to randomly a year and a half prior through a court attorney that I worked for when I worked for a New York County Supreme Court criminal court. Court attorney knew this guy, Abe. He was running for DA also, and somehow I got invited to his opening campaign event where I met him. Fast forward, it's September, a year later, and I'm looking in the newspaper. I think it's the New York Post, and I see this article about Ken Thompson winning the primary against Joe Hines, Abe George withdrawing from the race and throwing his support behind Ken Thompson. And then I see a note that Charles Hines is thinking about running on the Republican ticket in November. So Ken would actually have to oppose him. So Hines lost the Democratic primary. He's going to switch to the Republican side. So I call my dad, and I remember saying, do I just ask to become a part? Do I call Abe George and say, hey, can I come help out and just totally drop this Melman thing? And my father, he told me a story where he had an opportunity to do something and he didn't. So he said, no, if you have the opportunity, you should take it. So I called Abe George up and I said, hey, Abe, you remember me? And my name's Adam. Can I help in any way? And Ken Thompson, and he said, in fact, we really actually need help because we thought we were done, but Hines just switched sides. So we have a whole another 3 months campaign.
Right.
So I stopped going to Long Island, go to Fulton Street in Brooklyn, where we're opening a campaign office for the general election. And I remember that first day, my job was to take a paint peeler and peel off the name of whatever salon this place was before to put up the Ken Thompson. This is the Ken Thompson campaign.
It's like you're almost back to being a production assistant now.
1,000,000%. I mean, I am. I'm organizing events. I'm getting volunteers. Now, I meet Ken Thompson, and I realized that this is my full-time gig. I'm not making. I think they ended up paying me, not a lot, but I got some position where I actually got paid, and I knew that if I did a good job, that I would have the opportunity to interview for the position at Brooklyn, and my hope was that I would get the job. Knowing that my friend Jared wanted to do it as well, you have to realize there's events every weekend, marches, races, all these things. I didn't have a car. Jared had a car, and he had a job during the week. So I said, Jared, I think with you and your car, we can utilize you. I'll get you some FaceTime with Ken. You'll become on the weekends, you're just going to dedicate to us, and let's see how it works out. And I also did the same thing to my friend Katie Lee Wright. Also, I got to come and do some time on the campaign. Fast forward, we win. Fast forward, I interview for it. I get it. And I don't know why Mr. Thompson didn't give Jared or Katie Lee the job when he gave me the job, because I got the job in November, maybe a month after we won the election, and I was starting in February. And he's just not. Jared and Katie Lee, they interview, but they don't hear anything. And then a week before we're scheduled to start, I get a text back to back from Katie Lee and Jared, each saying, we just got the call. We're starting next week. Thank you. You're nothing to thank me for, but they got the job. We all started at the DA's office. And that's how I got my foot into the door to the DA's office.
And you guys all started that February after the election, and it happened in November?
Correct.
And you started in the DA's office as your first step into the courtroom then?
That was my first step into the courtroom. I was a line assistant. I have so much respect for police officers and all law enforcement officers, but I'm a liberal stoner from New York. Didn't love cops, just didn't love them. Now I love them because I've worked with them. Right now I totally appreciate it and have the utmost respect. But I remember my job was to tell cops when they'd come in on these drug arrests and be like, yo, you didn't do probable cause. You didn't do the right thing.
Right.
So sorry, Mr. Officer, but bye-bye. I remember I liked that too much. The prosecutor shouldn't like telling the officers tough that much, but I did. I enjoyed it. So I did that. Then I went to being a line assistant, and I did a bench trial, which was cool. That was my first trial. It was in front of Judge Chang, who actually was a Colgate graduate, really respected judge. He might be on the appellate court now. I'm not sure. And it was a assault by two people that lived in an apartment building. I forget the details, but it was a silly little, not silly, somebody hit somebody else with a chain and they were hurt. And I did a trial in front of the judge, and I remember loving it. And I remember, I think the defendant got a violation or something. The judge, it was a fine result, whatever it may be. But I remember the judge saying, I look forward to seeing more from you. You did really well. And I enjoyed it. But again, it was just a bench trial. So, we'll see. Then I get my first jury trial. So it's a DWI case. And very briefly, what happened is the defendant is driving drunk and she sideswipes somebody. I forget, let's call the guy's name John. She sideswipes John and she continues driving. And now John follows her, sees her park in front of this house and sees her go into the house. And John calls the police. The police come and the defendant who was driving drunk, it's a woman.
Yeah.
She's inside and the husband is outside. And long story short, they finally get her to come out. The eyewitness is like, yeah, that's the one that hit my car. They try to get her to do a breathalyzer. She refuses and she gets arrested. So that's the case. The case is a DWI, a refusal case. So there's no blood alcohol content level. And it's an ID case, meaning what the police officer doesn't see her driving.
Right.
What puts her in the car is this eyewitness
who got sideswiped and then followed her.
Exactly. And this eyewitness, and he was from the hood in Bed-Stuy, and he did not like law enforcement. And I'm law enforcement. I'm a prosecutor, right? So I remember trying to call him when I got the case because I had the eyewitness number, and it took me weeks to get him. And then I met him in a Dunkin' Donuts and chatted with him. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to testify. Yeah, I'm going to testify. So anyway, we start the trial. And the defense is that she wasn't driving. It was the husband. The husband was going to take the fall. He's going to say he was driving. So
he was outside when the cops came,
Correct. Yeah. So I present a good case. I present the officer that arrests her when she refuses. I have her testify, and she says, no, it wasn't me. It was my husband. I call the husband. I subpoena him, obviously. All female jury, 6 jurors. And the husband was convicted of rape of a stranger in a subway in the 1970s.
Oh.
So I remember 2 things. One is I got to, when he said he was driving the car, not his wife wasn't there, I got to ask him a question like, well, were you wearing a dress? Because I knew my witness was going to say the person was wearing a dress. And then I remember saying to him, also, just so everybody knows, you were convicted of raping somebody in 1970, a stranger in the subway. Isn't that true? Yes. And I was like, and that was against the law, right? Right? Yeah. I was like, and so there's nothing to say you're not lying and breaking your oath right now for your wife who you love when you would rape somebody who's a random person. And suffice to say, it discredited any of his testimony. But still, it's not a closed deal because I have yet to get John to the stand. John is MIA.
Yeah.
I've told the judge, Judge Quinones, that I'm trying to get John. I think I'm going to get John. And I'm going to have John tomorrow, or she's closing the case. That my case is done. Now I promised John to the jury, and without John, honestly, I may have a sustainable case that doesn't lose a directed verdict. But I think the judge would have dismissed it because there's really an ID missing. So I need John. So I texting John, and I say to John, some attorney says, why don't you mention to him that if she's convicted criminally, it'll help him civilly if he ever wants to sue her.
Right.
So I said that to him. I set him up a car for the next day. The car picked him up. He showed up. He gives the testimony, and that's it. And I remember the defense counsel, who was really nice guy, Darren Winslow, who's now like way up there in the defense bar. He was like, Adam, I believe my client when she says she wasn't her, but now I know she was lying to me the whole time. Clearly, can we plead guilty? I want to plead guilty. I want to plead guilty to the top charge. Top count. Now, I don't know, and this was not my call, so I'm not really particularly worried, but I remember I told that to my supervisor. I won't say the name of the supervisor if it wasn't the right move. And I said, they want to plead guilty now. The jury's out. They want to plead guilty to the top count. My supervisor's like, no, we're getting this verdict. We're going to hear what the jury has to say, which I don't know if that's okay, to be honest, because if you want to plead to the top count, I think you have that's it. We have to take, but we didn't. We wanted to hear what the jury said. So we said, no, sorry, we're going to wait for the jury. And the jury came back unanimous, guilty. And then the defense counsel was like, no, please don't ask for jail, all this stuff. And I was like, I'm not going to ask for jail. Don't worry. Clearly I want her to get some help that she needs and don't worry. So I do that trial and it was great. And it was a winner. And I was hooked. I was hooked. I loved it. I remember being in front of that jury and not blacking out, but like you get lost in it. And I had a seasoned co-counsel because you're not doing it alone. And she said something to me. She's like, wow, you're like, I'm blanking on the supervisor's name, but he's a really well-respected supervisor in the DA's office who's like the homicide attorney. He's like, you're like a young him. You're good. You have natural ability to speak to the jury. And it was fun. I like winning and I like doing things that people say I'm good at. And this was a lot of work. Hours and hours and hours of work, but it was also awesome work. Like it was fun. Like I remember the morning of my opening, I was a single guy and I met Natalia was her name. And I had this great 3 months with Natalia. And the morning of my opening, I'm with Natalia, and I start reading to Natalia this opening, and I'm so into it. And I remember, I didn't really think about this until years later, but I remember Natalia being like, wow, it's so awesome that you're so excited about what you're going to go do, and I remember she reiterated that a few months later when she broke up with me, that but you really, but I remember doing the opening, and I remember like getting to the office, and I remember being like outside of the office before I went into the office to get ready to take everybody to court, like practicing my closing, like I'm an actor. Some people are like, what are you doing? And I guess that was weird. Not everybody does it, but that's what I did. So I lasted there about 3.5 years. I did a few more trials, and then I was in the grand jury for a year, which was great. And I could tell a whole bunch of podcasts about that, but I will say this. There was a juror on one of the juries. They sit for 2 weeks. Her name was Alexandra, and her name now is Mrs. Wolk. We'll just say that. She was a grand juror. I waited for her to be dismissed off the jury, and then using a dating app that uses proximity, I was able to find her and then date her, marry her. We now have a kid together. We have twins due in a couple months. So every time I'm like, why did I ever become a lawyer? I realized that I wouldn't have met Alex in the grand jury if I wasn't a lawyer. And she says I waited 20 minutes or maybe 5 minutes after she was discharged. I thought it was like 2 hours. Then I realized that, okay, I met somebody. I need to start thinking a bit more long-term. So let me get some other skills. And I saw that in addition to being a prosecutor and getting experience in trial, a way to make yourself very viable to outside job prospects is to do wiretaps and long-term investigations, because it's a whole nother skill set. Long story short, I went into this long investigation unit. Was interesting. I did a wiretap. We took down this 36-person China throughout Brooklyn. This is before fentanyl was
Wow.
what it is now. And it was awesome. It was great. A lot of work, all behind the scenes, because it's a lot of wiretap listening. But it also made me realize, okay, this is great. And I could do the hours of work and reviewing the wiretap and all this stuff, but I don't love it. And I really don't love it because I know the evidence at the end of this is so strong that nobody's ever going to trial. Right. So it's just, there's no trial at the end of this. There's me gathering the evidence. And it's just cool aspects of it, right? I listen to a wiretap and I'm like, oh, they're doing a drug deal here. We should bust them. And I call my cop guys. I'm like, go over there. When this car comes, pull them out. Like, it's cool. Definitely good stories. But on a day-to-day, definitely not like fulfilling or exciting the way I wanted. So wanted to go back to be a line assistant. And the DA said I needed to wait 6 months. I didn't want to wait 6 months. So I had my buddy, Jeremy, who I went to Colgate with, who was the best man at my wedding. Not yet at that point, but he ended up being the best man at my wedding. And he was a lawyer, and he was working for Liberty Mutual in-house as an insurance defense attorney. And the way he described it to me was he did depositions every day. He had a caseload, but he's doing depositions and then he's doing trials.
Yes.
And to be honest, depositions are great, but like now it's not super exciting to do a deposition. I'd rather unless it's for my trial, I'd rather concentrate on my trial. But back then when I was spending days listening to a wiretap, typing up probable cause affidavits to get the wiretap extended, listening to the various ways you can identify crack as cronk, crack, crick, whatever the hell it is, and just figuring out their sort of code language, I was like, this is not what I want to do. And the prospect of doing a deposition every day in a car accident case sounded super appealing.
Yeah.
So I go for an interview with Mr. Harris. He also is a Colgate grad. I remember thinking that interview went great. I remember just being like, this seems cool. He's like, why do you want to do this? I was like, honestly, this seems like I get trial experience. I'm going to learn the civil field and on my feet. And this seems like a good gig, albeit it paid very little, but it was a way to get really good experience. He says, oh, you're not going to hear for a few weeks. Then Jeremy calls me and says, no, the interview went really well. He's going to offer you the job tomorrow. And that was how I went from criminal to civil, because I always heard that if you stay in criminal too long, you're going to get stuck. And I see that in some of my friends. And I don't mean stuck in a bad way. If I could still do criminal, I honestly would. If I was independently wealthy, could spend my days, one, making sure violent people are in jail, but more importantly, two, making sure that people that we look at as criminals are afforded the help necessary to allow them to not be criminals, right? The alternative program, sentencing, all that stuff. If I could do that, I would, right? But I can't because I'm not independently wealthy. And my father and my grandfather, while great lawyers, were not making generational wealth. So here I am. So I said, I got to figure this out. I think the increase in salary was like 10,000. It was really not a lot, but it was the experience that I was getting.
Yes.
And now I'm working for a big insurance company, Liberty Mutual. And I remember thinking this is a great, right? Because I don't know what I'm doing with civil, and I'm going to go do these trials. And if my clients lose, boo-hoo, big Liberty Mutual needs to pay, right? Like my clients are the ones that caused the accident, most likely, or so the plaintiffs are saying. So whatever, if they lose, it's not like my client's going to pay. It's the Liberty Mutual is going to pay. And it was great. I mean, they threw me right into the fire. I was doing depositions every day, going to court every day. This is like now 2017. It is an insurance job. So after court, I'm usually able to work remote. It was a really nice lifestyle. Me and Jeremy had a lot of afternoon work days together where we were doing everything. But I remember we saw Mission Impossible once on one of our work days. We worked the morning, went to court, and then we were like, Mission Impossible. Listen, you get what you pay for, right? But I also, when it came to trial, if I had a trial, I'm working my butt off, right? I don't know about Jeremy. To be honest, I feel like he was prepping it on the subway there. But I work because I wanted to kick some butt. This is the craft. This is it. So I would prep for these $100,000 cases, $50,000 cases. Maybe I had a $500,000 case, car accidents, trip and falls. And I went on a run. I got 6 defense verdicts in a row. I remember after the 6th one, I go up and it's nice. This nice plaintiff counsel who I see sometimes now, he looks at me when I come in to pick a jury. He's like, not you. Come on, man, not you. Because I cared and I was going to go that extra mile. And most of the defense counsel didn't care that much, nor should they. Honestly, most of the plaintiffs are hurt. The defendants, insurance companies should pay. But when I worked for them, the plaintiffs were faking it all. It's all BS. You're all trying to game the system. Don't let them do that. And my job for a year was telling injured people, you're not injured. And I was really good at it. And I won. And I prevented a lot of plaintiffs' attorneys from making money. And when I think about it, there's some injured clients that because of my strong advocacy didn't get compensation. I was a better attorney than their attorney, and I won. So I'm doing this. I'm loving it. It's great. I'm making like 70-something thousand. I calculate that I've saved Liberty Mutual $3.4 million or something like that. I go through all my verdicts and I'm like, okay, the exposure was like 4 million and you ended up paying 120. So theoretically, I saved you guys $3.7 million. I think it was 74,000 I was getting paid. So I thought I could survive on 90,000. So I said, I would like a $16,000 raise. They offered me a gift card. So I'm like, okay, this is not going to work. What do I do? I had my friend Mark Battipaglia, who I knew from law school, saw me in court one random morning. And he's like, I work at a plaintiff's firm, Rubenstein Reinecke. One of our main trial guys got let go. We need a trial guy. You should interview. So I remember going back home to my wife, and I'd sort of not drank the Kool-Aid, but I was a criminal guy, putting criminals away. And then I was an insurance defense guy, making sure people weren't gaming the system and accusing my innocent people and making money off it for injuries that didn't really happen. So in my mind, it's always been like plaintiffs. That's some crazy stuff. I mean, they're crazy people in this crazy world. They're all making stuff up. And I don't want to be a slimy plaintiff's attorney, but I do need money. And I start thinking, they say you make it in New York, you make it anywhere, right? So I was like, It could be kind of cool to at least see what the plaintiff side is about, right? See what it's about. Worst case, the insurance companies aren't going anywhere. I could always go back to, the big corporation. So I decided to take the leap of faith and I go interview at Rubenstein Reinecke, and I'm making $76,000, and I ask for $125,000. And I remember Mr. Reinecke saying, okay, like immediately. I was like, but what? Now, to me, like I'd always imagined that I would be happy and able to afford my lifestyle if I can make $120,000 a year. My wife would work. We don't need to be rich, but we're going to survive. Now, that is not close to enough money to survive in New York City. I didn't really know that yet. But I'm thinking 125, whoa.
Yeah.
My wife's like, whoa. She's already asking if she can now become a Pilates instructor. We're holding off on that because she's always wanted to do that. And I take the job. And it is Rubinson Reinecke, great firm, great people. It is the antithesis of a New York plaintiff's firm with real cases. There's plaintiff's firms that are mills, and there are plaintiff's firms that have the vibe of a plaintiff firm, but we are fighting for your rights and we're real cases. And that's what this firm was. And we did a lot of civil rights. You weren't assigned any case. It was everybody's cases. So I'm going on different cases every day, slip and falls, car accidents, police brutalities, all this stuff. And then finally I get my first trial. And it's a rear end car accident in Queens, 55-year-old plaintiff who was a teacher and missed some days from school. But at the end of the day, it's a soft tissue, a bulge on a 60-something-year-old with one injection, and that's it. And it was an awesome trial, and it was fun, and I got into it, and they awarded $120,000, and everybody was super happy. And that's when I was like, okay, this is awesome. This is more fun than the defense. Prompted or what happened exactly, but I did a couple more trials there. I won one. I lost two. I never forget. One was in Staten Island, and it was a slip and fall at a speedway. And I forget what the client's name was, but I told him from the get-go he was a gay black guy. And I said, they're not going to like you in Staten Island. Listen, my job is to convince people, so I have to take people for who they are. Staten Island's full of police officers, FDNY officers, a great jury pool for certain plaintiffs and not a good jury pool for other plaintiffs. I told this guy, you're going to lose. I don't care. I'm looking at this jury. I think we have a good case. I'm going to present it well, but you're going to lose. Take the offer. I go and do my job, and at that point, I'm good. I'm a little more showboaty, so maybe even appear better than I actually am. But I remember leaving court the first day, and my client was like, you're amazing. You're a rock star. We're going to kick their butt. And I was like, dude, take the money. A wise attorney once said to me that if you are a trial attorney and you never win any of your trials, you should probably get a different career. If you're a trial attorney who wins all of their trials, you're a cherry picker. I definitely learn more from the cases I lose than the cases I win, and it helps to make me a better lawyer every single time. So now I'm doing this standard PI stuff in New York City, and I get an email from a headhunter. It was a grabbing subject line in LinkedIn. I forget what it was, but it was grabbed me. So I looked at it, and essentially it was a weird job posting. It was a job posting for an asbestos trial attorney where they wanted a trial person. They didn't want you to know about asbestos. And then your job would be to travel throughout New York State doing asbestos trials, initially with somebody who's been doing it for a long time, and then eventually on your own. And I didn't know much about asbestos, but I knew that it's high-end litigation, that it's serious, that people are dying. And I knew that I had now gotten a taste of criminal from the DA, the insurance defense from Liberty, plaintiff's work from Rubenstein. And I'm like, this seems like a cool opportunity. Traveling sounds interesting for work. And I want to hone my skill set, and I want to have somebody to look up to because I know I still have so much to learn. So I take the job. I leave where I'm very happy at the Rubinson Reinecke. I get a significant increase in my salary. And my job is to learn asbestos. I'm going to spend a little time talking about this because it's a really interesting job. So I get hired, and I really don't know what my job is. There's this guy, James Long, who's like a 70-year-old trial attorney, used to be a prosecutor in Philly, then was like the head guy at White's in Luxembourg. And now he's at Bellick and Fox is where I worked. And he's been doing asbestos trials throughout New York for the last 10 years. And he's looking to retire, and I'm going to learn it. Great guy, great attorney, but he's set in his ways. He doesn't use technology, and he's not the most amazing teacher. Right. No negative, great guy and great teacher when I was on trial with him. But day to day, I didn't know what I was supposed to do. So I just read about asbestos, and then I read transcripts. I spent the first 4 months just reading asbestos trial after asbestos trial after asbestos trial. We end up finally getting on trial. This is February 2020. This is my first asbestos trial. I'm really just a second seat, but asbestos is a horrible naturally occurring fiber that causes cancer that is incurable. When we take on these cases, either the person is dead or dying, and I'm speaking with them as they die, or the wife. So this was a case where the individual was dead. So I remember going to Philadelphia with James to meet the wife and the daughter, and observed him speak with them, and spoke for a couple hours. And then we go and do the trial. And it's in Philly. And I do a direct of the daughter about what it was like to care for her father. I remember towards the end, I mean, it's just really just stuff that you have to listen to the jury because they have to understand it, but it's really hard stuff. And there was not a dry eye in the jury pool after that testimony. We ended up losing the case. Don't need to go into the details why, but then COVID hit. So I've got this one taste of trial in Philadelphia, asbestos, then COVID hits. And I'm one of the newest people at the firm, so I'm let go. Not let go, I'm
Furloughed.
That's the word. I'm furloughed.
Yes.
But it's COVID time, and I mean, clearly, I don't mind not working. I went to law school and not work, so like, government's going to pay me money. I'm chilling with she's my wife at this point. We're living in Greenpoint. Okay, whatever. I'm not working, but I'm getting money from the government. And eventually, I get a call back 4 months later, and I come back. So I come back. James is gone. They've hired this guy named Adam Cooper, who's a rock star asbestos attorney from White's in Luxembourg, nationally known, really cool that he's there. But I don't think they told him why they hired me. I don't think they told him that I was told that I'm the trial guy and I'm going to learn the trial guy. So I remember coming back from COVID and like feeling things out with this guy, Cooper, and he wasn't really giving me much to work with. And so finally I went to this office. I was like, yo, I'm the trial person. You need to train me. I didn't come here to not do trials. I don't know what they told you, but unless you're going to teach me how to do these trials, I'm not staying here, right? I'm willing to work. I admit I don't know much, but like you need to incorporate me and involve me. And I think he was a little taken aback, but he did. He incorporated me, and he was super into technology, and he had a whole system, and he was able to teach me how to present an asbestos case. The meds are voluminous. The records with respect to the corporate defendants are voluminous. But anyway, from that, I learned how to try a case. And my job in the asbestos world, and for the 2 years or 3 years that I did this with Mr. Cooper, was I did the clients. So my job was to present the witness testimony of if the person who has the disease is alive, of the person, and of their loved ones. And from that testimony, I need to establish the liability of the defendant, meaning what product did the defendant's product expose my client to the level of asbestos sufficient to cause his disease. And then once I prove that, it's all about pain and suffering. It's all about telling my client's life story and making the jury understand that this disease has taken everything away from him and is going to make him leave this earth much earlier than he ever wanted. And it's tough testimony. But that was my job. My job, he did the science. My job was to tell the story of the victims, for lack of a better term. And I'll be honest, like I dealt with some death cases in the DA's office, but this is pretty heady stuff. And I've now known about asbestos, and now I'm my first trial. It's the first trial. It's in the middle of COVID, but they're doing trials in upstate. And I get told that the trial is this. The trial is, there was a 32-year-old kid who was autistic and nonverbal. And his father worked for Mack Trucks. And his father worked on the brake pads or something for Mack Trucks. Worked when the kid was a baby. 3 years ago or 2 years ago, the nonverbal autistic son, our plaintiff, something's clearly not right, right? And the parents know something's clearly not right. So they take him to the doctor, and they find out that he has been exposed to asbestos. The father would come home when the kid was a baby, all the asbestos all over him, hug him, and that's enough exposure. He had passed away by this point. The autistic son had passed away. I'm blanking on the town in upstate New York, but I'm going up there. The trial is scheduled for 2 months in Saratoga, and my job is to go up there, and I need to get to know these people. I need to know the father and the mother.
And the father's still alive. He didn't get infected.
Father didn't get infected. Father's fine. My job is to go up to them and to learn about their life and to learn about their son's life. And I make the decision immediately that that is not something that can be accomplished in an hour, let alone one day. So I make the decision that I'm going to go up there for 3 days. I'm going to stay at a hotel, and I'm going to go there for a few hours the first day, a few hours the second day and a few hours the third day and speak about their son and their observations of their son. Speak about what the father experiences knowing that his job, which he thought was supporting his family, essentially killed his family. I mean, it's really horrible stuff, but this is what you need to do. My job is to tell their life story. And that's what I did for the next 2.5 years. I would fly around the country, spending multiple days with victims of asbestos exposure to learn their story, to get them comfortable enough to speak with me. And then I would formulate that into a direct. That first case was a horrible situation. We prepped a case. I think I gave my opening to some of the defendants, and eventually it settled during jury selection. My next big trial was in Seattle, where I had to go. I went to Seattle. I met this guy, Mr. Viglietta. He was a lawyer. He went to school upstate Buffalo. One summer in college, he worked at this factory. Then he goes to law school. He becomes a member of JAG. I mean, he's a great, awesome guy. And he ends up getting diagnosed with mesothelioma in his 70s from this one summer in upstate New York. So I fly out to Seattle and I spend 3 days with him and his wife because I need him to identify the defendant. So his testimony is not just about all the pain and suffering he's going through, but it's about identifying the defendant. And I remember that being a really impactful experience for me. One, because it was me speaking to this gentleman who was very articulate, very intelligent, able to express his emotions, say better than the other clients I've spoken with. And he's dying. And he has an awesome wife and he's just like a real person. And it was my job to get to know him, to be able to tell his story. And he was a great guy. And I remember just spending days there, learning about him, talking to him, joking with him, taking pictures of the various things he did around the house so I could show it during the trial. So I spend 3 days there and we go and do the trial. It's in Lockport, New York. He's so sick he can't come. He testifies over Zoom, but some of his family members come. And we did the trial. It was my first big asbestos trial. I put him on. His testimony was like 3 hours. I put the wife on. Adam crossed the experts. And we ended up getting a verdict of $2 million, which is like a $20 million verdict in New York City, because Lockport, New York is as upstate as you can go, very conservative, very low numbers. So it was a good result. But more so, it was impactful for me in the sense that I hate to say for the first time, because I definitely enjoyed helping. I saw the good result that my work had in helping criminals get off the street or helping them when they needed help and getting money for injured clients. But this was something different. This was a lot more. This was telling somebody's life story and helping their family get some semblance of security for the rest of their life. And it just made me realize that while I like this job and it's fun and I like trials, it's a lot of responsibility. And I remember thinking that it's a lot of work. I remember thinking that to do a trial really well, you got to go to somebody's house. You got to go spend time with them. And I remember thinking after that, do I want to do this for this type of law? Do I want to spend my life encountering people that are dying or recently dead and getting justice for their family? And I didn't know, to be honest. I didn't know. Anyway, I was like, this is great. We continue to do this. My wife gets pregnant. We have our first son, Benji. In fact, we had our first son, Benji, and that's when I had that first big trial in Buffalo that we won. Mm-hmm. And which was a great experience for me, but it was very stressful on my marriage and on my wife. Understandably, she felt as I had abandoned her. She used that term quite a bit, actually. And I guess I had no choice. I had to support my kid. This was my job, but the kid was born. I was there for a month, and then I'm gone. She ends up having to go live with her family in Maryland. So eventually I realized, well, this is great. I want to continue to do it for another year. I want to learn from Adam Cooper, hone my skills. I knew that this probably isn't sustainable because I can't be gone for weeks at a time. It's not fair to my wife, and it's not what I view. Maybe it's fine now when the kid's really small, but when they're older, I want to be there. I want to take my kids to baseball games. I want to do trials, but I don't need to be all over the United States doing the trials. So I start looking for other jobs. Now, I really like my job. I'm just doing trials. And as horrible as it may sound, my job going and speaking with people that are dying or their loved ones, it was also extremely fulfilling, because what you'll realize, and this is something that I got to experience that has impacted me greatly, is that everybody is very different, but we're all very, very much the same. We all have loved ones. We all have life events that we care about, weddings, births. We all have jobs. We all have these things that are universal. And my job was to figure out what aspects of these victims' lives I could tell the jury that they would be able to resonate. What I learned very quickly was that, as horrible as it may have been for especially the widows to speak to me about their husband, their dead husband or their dead son or whatever the case may be, eventually I was able to develop the skill set necessary where I did my darndest to turn that into a fulfilling experience for them. Because I'm not asking about the bad things. I want to know how you guys met. I want you to tell me all the awesome things that you and your husband did during your life. And 95% of the time, these people after were just so pleased that they got to tell the story. Obviously emotional too, because they've lost this person, but they've got to tell a random person whose sole job it is to listen to you and to empathize with you and to tell your story over the course of days. And you get close with people. And I think that for a lot of these widows, they never had that opportunity. I mean, when do you have the opportunity to say, I'm going to talk to you about my dead husband's life and how I met him and everything that he did and all the ways it impacted him? You don't. I don't think I've ever spoken about my wife with somebody about all the amazing things and all the reasons I love her. And that's what I'm asking them. Why did you love your husband? What made you fall in love with your husband? What about that, about your husband, did you care about that you saw this disease slowly take away? How did that impact your husband? How did that impact you? And taught me an ability to speak with people about serious, serious issues, about great losses in a way that they would feel comfortable speaking to me. And I always would tell these people, I had the same spiel. I'd say, this is a job for me, right? I go around the country encountering people who have just lost their loved one. If I ever am speaking to you and you get the sense that it is a business, that's because it is a business for me. I can't be too personally involved because I will get too emotional. But I don't for a moment forget that this is a person. My job is to highlight the great aspects of your deceased husband and highlight how this disease has destroyed all your lives. That's my job, because that's what's going to make the jury pay. And to do that, I need all the stories, all the good and all the bad. It just makes you realize that people can go through horrible stuff, and listening to them and being there for them can do more good than ever for them themselves telling the story. And it allows you as a trial attorney to get the information necessary for you to actually do a job and do justice. Because when you're talking about the loss of somebody's life, if we don't win, at least I need to know that we put everything out there and that was it. But that was my job. I liked it. It was great. I didn't want to go do another job, but I needed to for my family. But I wasn't going to do a job that I didn't want. I wanted to do trials. I'd like trials. I'm getting a level of respect in the New York scene for trials, so I want to do trials. And I need money because I have a kid now. So most firms, plaintiffs' firms, you don't get to do just trials. So, I mean, sometimes you do, but most of them you have a caseload. You do some trials. Anyway, I got a job interview. Somehow Liakis Law Firm reached out to me. Liakis Law Firm is a preeminent personal injury law firm in New York. And don't know how they got my name. It's three young brothers that run it. And one of the brothers, Nicholas Liakis, had a headhunter reach out to me and say, this gentleman, Nicholas Liakis, has heard about you, has seen you. I don't know if he was BSing me, but he wants to interview you. Now, at this point, I'm at the Bellick and Fox. I've asked for a raise. They're not giving me the raise I need. Me and my wife have a kid. We need more money. Financially, we need more money. And at this point in my mind, I was thinking of continuing to do the asbestos work, but moving to Philadelphia, because I'd work remote most of the time, the asbestos, except when I'm on trial. And Philadelphia is half the price of New York. So if I can't get a raise, at least I could lower the money I spend, and this will allow us to maybe start saving money and do the things that adults are supposed to do. So at this point, we're looking at places in Philly so I could work remote in the job at Bellick and Fox when I get the request to interview with this guy, Nick. And I'm supposed to go in to see him. And I remember the morning of being like, no, I like where I am. No, and I messaged the headhunter. I said, you know what? I'm not going to go in today.
The refusal of the call, if we go back to screenwriting.
Yes, refuse. Like they had, or I not only was it was scheduled. The call was scheduled. There was a Zoom call scheduled with Nick at 1 p.m. And that morning, for whatever reason, I backed out of it. But as a good headhunter does, she pressed back. I was supposed to go in person, and they said, no, just do a Zoom. You know what? What am I? Then I'm just an asshole if I don't do the Zoom, right? Like I have no excuse.
Totally. Yeah.
So I'm like, fine, I'll do the Zoom. And I remember getting on the Zoom. I remember very well. And I remember hitting it off with Nick immediately. Trial guys, no trial guys. I mean, that's just the case, I think, a lot. If you are a trial attorney and you love it and you're good at it, you relate to other trial attorneys and you could discuss it and there's just a vibe. And I remember over Zoom, he's like, I want you to be on the trial team. It's me, somebody else, and then it'd be you. And we just do trials and we do these $1 million construction trials, $1 million car accident trials, so on and so forth. And I got a kick out of him. And I was like, this seems like it could be cool. So I go and meet him and his other brothers, and it's 5 days a week in the office. There's no remote. It's a very big shift, but I would be doing trials and $1 million trials. It'd be high value cases, but it wouldn't be asbestos. It'd be car accidents. It'd be construction accidents. It'd be trip and falls. So I was like, you know what? Let's make the jump. They paid me enough money. I jumped and I started Liakis Law. Now, Nick tells me, by the way, Adam, we have an inquest your first week that we need you to take care of. Sure, and being the hard worker that I am, because if you follow my Instagram at Trial Attorney Wolk, you'll know that there's only one thing you can control about a trial, and that's the amount of prep work you do. So when I'm on trial, I prep. An inquest is not a trial, but I figured best go into the office to see what this is a week before I start, because the first day I'm starting at Liakis, I'm supposed to be in Civil Kings doing this inquest. So I get into the office and I'm looking at the paperwork and I'm like, what? No, this isn't an inquest. This is a trial. This is not what? The boss is telling me it's an inquest. It's a trial. I'm not working the rest of the week. I'm still off. My trial starts Monday. Well, okay, fine. Fine. Let's do this. So I get into it. It's a trip and fall apartment in Brooklyn. Nice 33-year-old plaintiff, has 2 kids, has a small herniation, and has like a percutaneous discectomy. So say if I'm going to value that injury, at most $500,000, really $200,000. But I go pick a jury, it's liability and damages. And you have to realize I've been second seat for 3 years now. So while I'm doing openings and doing closings, I'm not on my own. And now I'm back on my own, like where I used to be. And it was a good case. And I just had so much fun with it. And that first week I rocked it. I just was in my zone. Everything at the trial that could have gone well, went well. The defendants came. They appeared to be the slumlords that they were. They didn't do themselves any favors. My client testified. And long story short, we win. We go to damages. I asked for millions of dollars, and the jury awards $3.175 million or something like that. So within the first week, I'm texting Nick, hey, I just got the verdict for this case that's really only worth $200,000. It's $3.5 million or whatever it is. Long story short, this is where I've been for the last year and 8 months. I have become the chair of the trial team, meaning that I am responsible for cases post note of issue in the sense that I need to get them ready for trial. But essentially what it means is that I have 70 firm trial dates for the next year. And it's my job to make sure that we have all the stuff necessary to pursue them if it doesn't settle. Because 95% of the cases settle. I have a trial next Thursday that's going to go. It's not going to settle. I also have a trial the following Wednesday that I'm going to have to say I have engaged on Thursday. So it's back-to-back trials. Most of them settle. It's fun. It's exciting. I've done some fulfilling work here. I had a horrible car accident case where a sister died and another sister observed that sister die. And I remember getting this case, and it was a situation where we were doing a mediation and there's 6 other victims and there's $6 million to divvy up. And honestly, our economic value of this case was not very much. The pecuniary loss from the decedent was a few $100,000. So it's really unknown what is the value of this case where somebody died, they died very quickly, and then the sister who's surviving observed this person die. and has emotional trauma and some soft tissue injuries, right? But what's the value when the pecuniary interest of the decedent is only a few $100,000? The point is, it could be a huge range. Going to a mediator, who knows what the value is? I don't know how bad the other people are hurt. I know one person else died, and they were like a rocket science or something, and they have millions of dollars in pecuniary loss. So I decided to do what I did in asbestos. And I said, you know what? I'm going up to meet these clients. And I went and met, it was the sister and their mother, and the other sister passed away. And, I spent a couple of days up there and just learning their story. And their story was tremendous, right? Their story, they're not just sisters, they're partners. They worked together. They did everything together. They did everything for the house with their mother. It was just a really, really horrible situation where me going there and learning about the mother and the daughter and everything for 2 days allowed me to tell a story, and to tell a story where there's millions of dollars of damage because the surviving sister observed her decedent sister die, and the way she died was by suffocating on her collapsed lungs. And I'm able to tell a story about that, and I'm able to relay it to the mediator, and it's horrible. But it's probably the most similar I'd ever done a case presentation to being a director, because I didn't have any substantive facts here. The whole value of my case was the story I was able to tell this mediator about the trauma that the surviving sister has. The mediator could have awarded $200,000 and it would have been fine, right? That would have been okay. He ended up awarding $2.3 million. And this was a recent one. And the surviving sister and the mother were just in here today before I came to do this podcast. But that is a case that impacted me a lot, because it is a case that I will say another lawyer wouldn't have gotten the result I got. I got a really good result for a client that is very deserving. And I got that result because of the skills that I've learned in this job, but more so in the cabs in Montauk, in the fishing boats, in the days I spend speaking with widows and people that are dying and their sons. That's where I learned the skills necessary to be able to take somebody's horrific experience, tell that story in a cohesive way that causes either a jury or, in the case of a mediator, somebody to find that my clients are entitled to a large sum of money. That's my job. I'm a lawyer and I think like a lawyer, but just really a storyteller. I'll throw one more story in real quick. Is in between the $3 million case and then the $2.5 million mediator case, I had a few other trials, and one was a gut punch. It was a damages only trial in the Bronx, which is a really good county for us. And I worked my butt off for the trial, and my client was happy and everybody was happy, but we lost. We got $50,000 in future medical damages, and we got no pain and suffering. And it was a real gut punch. And I remember talking to the jury and being like, why? What was it? And one of them said, well, your guy said that he could do golf. And how hurt can you be if you can do golf? And I remember being so upset at myself that night, because in New York, there's something called loss of enjoyment of life. And if you are injured due to somebody else's negligence and you can't do the things you enjoy at all or to the same level as you could do before, you're entitled to compensation. It doesn't matter if what you enjoy doing is golf, what you enjoy doing is watching a particular TV show. It does not matter. What matters is you have figured out that this is what gives you pleasure. And now, because of your injuries stemming from that defendant's negligence, you can't do it in the same fashion as you did. You can't get the same pleasure that you once did. And accordingly, you're entitled to compensation. When I had a juror tell me, because he says he can't play golf, I'm not awarding you money, I realized I messed up. Listen, I don't think I lost the trial, right? Like, I don't know. I left it all out there. I did a darn good job. But I voir dire on loss of enjoyment of life specifically every time and tell them about the golf, especially when cases don't involve golf. But I say, if somebody can do everything, but they love golf, but now they can't golf the same way, even if they used to shoot a 71 and now they shoot an 85, and they used to play 4 times a week and now they can only play twice, that is something that you're allowed to compensate for. And I need to make sure now, before you're picked on this jury, that if there's evidence that my client can't do those things, whether it's golf or something else, you're going to compensate it. So it was a gut punch. It was a tough loss. It wasn't a loss. We got money. Client got some money. We recouped our expenses. But it just re-impressed to me that I'm constantly learning, that there's constantly more things to learn, and that I need to prep even better and prep even more because I can't let that happen again.
You learn more from the losses than the wins usually.
100%.
Besides being a cab driver and a former, production assistant and fisherman, what makes you unique as a trial lawyer?
I think what makes me unique is that I don't view myself as a lawyer. I really don't. I mean, I am a lawyer, but I'll give you an example. Sometimes I'm in my suit and tie and I'm walking by and I catch myself in the mirror and I'm like, oh my goodness, I look like a real lawyer, right? And I don't look at myself as a lawyer. I just look at myself as a guy, as a person, just like you, the jury, just like you, the plaintiff, just like you, the defendant, right? And it's not just how I approach it when it comes to doing trials and that I don't look at myself as a lawyer, but that goes further is that I don't look at myself as any different than anybody else. I'm not any more intelligent, any better, in any better position than anybody else that I'm speaking to. And I think a lot of my life experiences, from substance abuse to the interesting path I got to become an attorney, has impressed upon me a important understanding that but for one thing or another, I could be in a totally different circumstance. And because of that, I'm fortunate to be in this circumstance, and I'm going to do my darndest to help my clients, and I'm going to do my darndest to tell a story to a bunch of jurors. And I think the fact that when I speak with my clients, I'm just trying to learn about them. And when I tell this story to the jury, that's just it. I'm just a guy telling my client's story. I think that resonates a lot with the jury. I also think that in my heart, I like acting, I like storytelling, and I think I'm good. I can read a room and I can read a jury, and I can tell when a defendant needs to be cross hard and really just put in their place and when that's going to play well with the jury. And I can tell when that approach is not going to play well with the jury, and I adapt. I'm very good at reading people. I was a cab driver. My job is to talk to people to get tips. I needed tips because I needed to buy my drugs. I needed money. I needed to hustle. But for a lot of great things and an awesome supportive family, I wouldn't be here right now. So I think what makes me a unique lawyer is that when you meet me and you see me in action, you're not thinking, oh, this guy's a lawyer, right? You're just thinking this guy is trying to do right by his client. I also think that what makes me unique is my unwillingness to not be prepared. I knew nothing about asbestos, and I learned asbestos. I knew nothing about civil law and car accidents. I learned about that. That doesn't happen without putting yourself outside your comfort zone. You have to put yourself outside the comfort zone. I knew that back when I was doing film and TV, and I tried to do that job with Dog the Bounty Hunter. That was way outside my comfort zone, and I didn't get it. But I've only reached this point as chair of the Liakis Law trial team, doing multi-millions of dollars of cases per day, because I pushed myself, because I realized what I liked, I realized what I was good at, and I did everything I could to put myself in the situation where I can excel at that. My dad always says, you do what you're good at. I realized I liked this. I did this. I realized that the more I do this, the more I know I don't know a lot. So there's so much more to learn. And then I took the job opportunities where I would learn from people that had more experience. And that is why I'm here today. And that's what I like to do. I like to tell stories. I like to do trials. It's exciting. It's fun. And you're helping people. The last thing I'll say that makes me not different, but unique is, I don't know, unique. Maybe unique. I'll be very critical of you on the stand, right? Of a doctor or a defense attorney. I'll eviscerate you. I'll be nasty. My wife has heard me do it, and she's been repulsed by the way I'm destroying this person verbally. When it comes to your adversaries, your coworkers, your peers, every single person that you encounter in your daily life, no matter what you do, it does no benefit to anyone to be a critical person. Don't beat people down. Don't criticize people. Lift them up. Bring them up. Teach them. You get more bees with honey. You will get more help from your paralegals when you are kind to them. You will get more respect from your adversaries when you treat them with respect. This is a highly adversarial business we're in. Because of that, I make an extra effort all my life, all aspects of it, to ensure that this adversarial aspect of me is the last thing that comes out. Because at the end of the day, if you want a good result, whether that be from your loved ones, your coworkers, your adversaries, you're going to get that result by being kind more than you are being critical. Just nobody wants to hear criticism. It doesn't work. So I try to do that. And I think that in a field of personal injury where you're constantly fighting against these big evil corporations and you hear me yelling on a Zoom or losing my shit, the fact that the paralegals know that my door is always open, that I'm never going to yell at them, that I'm not going to yell at them because they don't deserve to be yelled at. And even if they do, that's counterproductive. That's not, I want a good product, and yelling at them is not going to get the good product, even if they deserve to be yelled at, which they probably don't.
Yes, I think the world would be a lot better place if people followed that line of thinking. Unfortunately, easier said than done. I know you've shared a lot of good stories, but do you have maybe one more about a case that had a significant impact on you?
I'll give you a case. It's not a trial case, but it's a case that had a significant impact on me. So I was a prosecutor, and like I mentioned, I'm a liberal prosecutor, not very much into alternative programming, very much into giving people second chances and opportunities. So anyway, I'm in the grand jury and I encounter this case, and it's a gun case. And this kid was in a cab that was pulled over. I didn't really love the probable cause for the police pulling over the cab, but this kid was with his friend. They pull him out, and a gun falls out of the defendant's jacket.
And he's just in the cab. He was riding in the cab, right?
He's in the cab with his other buddy, and they get him for gun possession.
Yeah.
And no record, 21 in Medgar Evers College, grew up, I believe, in the projects, but no record, no nothing, which honestly, if you're coming to me in the grand jury with a gun charge, very rarely your first encounter with the law. But this is his first encounter with the law. And I look at the case and I look at the client, and I get a call from the defense counsel who says to me, essentially, Adam, that it was somebody else's gun. He was in the cab with friends. This is a good kid. He goes to college. He works. He's never been in trouble. He made a stupid decision for his friend. What can we do? What can we do? And I remember going to some of my supervisors and saying, I think that we should offer this person an alternative program. There's a few gun alternative programs that we should offer them. And I remember them saying, okay, we can do that. He needs to do a few things first, and then we're gonna do that. So the case gets indicted, because you need to indict the case in order to offer the program. So I do the indictment and I hand it off to a line assistant. And at some point I see emails about this guy in this case, and I remember. And in the time from which I'd spoken with the defense counsel 6 months prior to the time that the sentencing was going to occur, there had been a lot of gun violence in Brooklyn. And the policies of the Brooklyn District Attorney's Office had changed. And even if you were a first-time offender with a gun, you were not getting this alternative program. You might not get jail, but you're getting a felony. Your life is forever going to be somewhat ruined if you didn't have a felony before, and that's it. And I remember seeing that was what was going to happen to this defendant. And I remember I went to my boss. Tim Goff was my gray zone boss's name. And I went to my boss and I said, Tim, this isn't right. You guys said that you would give him this program. I relayed to the defense counsel that he'd get this program. And honestly, this is the type of kid that deserves the program. So forget the promises that were made. This is what we have these programs for. What am I doing here if, because of external violence, there needs a shift in our policy and now we can't help somebody? I mean, that's not justice. That's not okay. I'm not okay with it. And I remember being upset. And Ken Thompson had passed away by that point. He died of cancer. And D.A. Gonzalez, who was the current district attorney in Brooklyn, became the DA. And I remember going to meet with him. I sent an email and I went and met with him. And I was just like, this isn't right, Mr. Gonzalez. This isn't why I did what I did with Ken. We really need to give this person this program. He deserves it. It's the best thing for Brooklyn, right? You don't want him getting a felony. Now he can't go back to college. Now who knows what becomes of his life? Let's let him be a productive member of the community, and let's do what's right and do what's just. And eventually they did. They gave him the alternative program. And last I saw, he graduated college, and I'd be lying if I said I've looked up to see what he's been doing. I've no clue, but I suspect it's good things. And I know that if it was another prosecutor that got that case that fell on, this kid would have had a felony and his life would be different. That was fulfilling for me, impactful for me, and really taught me the power of law, the power that I have as an advocate, and the positive things that can be accomplished through advocacy and fighting for what's right, because I'm getting paid nothing, putting criminals in jail. I might do all that for things I don't believe in, and drugs and all this stuff. But you know what? This is not right. We're here to help. I'm putting my foot down because it's not cool. And it was a good result. And I think that's really stuck with me.
At CloudLex, we understand the challenges personal injury law firms face every day. That's why we've built the Legal Cloud platform to help you stay productive and keep your cases moving forward. CloudLex provides a comprehensive suite of applications and features to support every stage of intake, pre-litigation, trial, and more. From innovative case management to insightful analytics and HIPAA-secure client communication. CloudLex empowers your firm with the technology to thrive. Build your firm of the future and see for yourself at cloudlex.com. Now, here is this episode's closing argument.
Our work as trial attorneys in the personal injury field is an integral part of this society. And there's two main aspects of that. One is on an individual level. I encounter people that have been hurt by somebody else's negligence, that in some cases have lost loved ones and have died, and are in a very vulnerable situation, and they're coming to me to ask for help, to ask for justice, to ask for me to listen to them, to hear them. And that's what I do. I listen to them. I hear them. I gather all the information, and I tell their story. I know that impacts people's lives. I know it impacts my clients when I get a good financial result for them, but I also know it impacts my clients when we just get to speak and they get to understand that somebody's hearing about them, hearing of their loss, hearing of their struggles, and that they're going to have an opportunity to voice it to someone, to say what the defendants did was wrong, to say what was taken from me or taken from my loved one should not have been taken. It's a very individual, personalized job. I think that's why I like it so much, because I really do. I get to help people, but I get to talk to people and learn their stories. And again, nobody's coming to see me when things are going great. They're coming to me when they're in a rough spot. It's my job to help them. And that is a major part of being a plaintiff's attorney. It is a fulfilling part, and it's part of what I like to do. The other part that I think gets lost a lot is that personal injury law is absolutely necessary to have a safe society. It just is. You go into a store to buy something. That store is supposed to be safe for you to walk around in. Now, I would like to think that store owners will spend money to keep their store safe, but they won't. And they don't. They keep situations safe. They keep a store safe because they know if they don't, somebody gets hurt, they can be sued. We have laws, criminal laws, right, that say you can't rob or you're going to jail. Those laws aren't so clear when it says you need to make sure that you drive safely and don't hurt somebody. If you get in an accident and you didn't intentionally do it, there's not a legal repercussion per se. But there needs to be a repercussion because there needs to be an incentive for people to look where they're driving. There needs to be an incentive for store owners to keep their stores safe. There needs to be an incentive for big corporations who have dangerous ingredients like asbestos to tell the people using it that they could die from it. This is serious stuff. I mean, I think sometimes we get lost in you're an ambulance chaser, you're this or that. No, you can walk safely in the streets because we sue those people that let their properties become disrepair and endanger it for innocent civilians walking by. You can be assured that the products being sold to you are most likely and not going to hurt you because the corporations who know and only care about money know that if they put a product out there that's bad, that's going to hurt somebody, even if it saves them some money than making a good product, it's going to hurt them in the long run because plaintiff's attorneys are going to come and they're going to sue them. They're going to ask for money. They're going to say, you were wrong because you knew this was a dangerous product and yet you thought you'd put it in the marketplace anyway. And now because of that, my client's life is forever changed. And you're going to pay for it. We keep the world safe. I know it's silly. I know it's crazy, but we really do. I don't think that people, unfortunately, go about the world saying, I want to make sure everybody is treated well and everybody's safe and everybody's good just because. The system of justice that we have is something to be proud of. I think it's something that most attorneys lose sight of. In certain countries, there's a king. If you do something, the king is going to decide what your punishment is or what you get. In other countries, it's just a judge. In this country, when you're hurt because of somebody else's negligence, what we do is very unique and it's beautiful. It really is. We gather other members of your community where you live and ask them to be actuaries. Ask them to assess the injuries that you have sustained, that their peer has sustained, and ask them to come to a number that compensates them for their injuries. Ask them to look at somebody's life, see how somebody's negligence has impacted that life, and as a community come to a number that will help that person make up for everything they've lost. Also, as a community, come together and say, no corporation, you were negligent in putting this into the marketplace. Or no defendant driver, you were negligent because you didn't look left before you made the right turn because you were in a rush somewhere and you were really only caring about yourself when you really need to care about everybody else in this world when you're driving a 1,000-pound or 2,000-pound machine that can kill people. You don't get to just say, I'm in a rush and I'm not going to look to the left. Because that's going to change somebody else's life. And when you do that and you hurt somebody, there's going to be somebody to sue you. There's going to be somebody to hold you accountable. There's going to be somebody that gets other people of the community to say, no, this is wrong. This is not okay. This is not the way things should be. And how are we going to make things right? That's what being a trial lawyer is. That's the value of personal injury law. It's keeping this world safe. It's speaking up for those who don't have a voice. And it's making sure that people who have had their life absolutely destroyed, traumatized, or even just hurt a little are appropriately compensated.
That was trial lawyer Adam Wolk. Thanks for sharing your stories. To learn more about Adam and the trial team at Liakis Law, visit their website, liakaslaw.com. All right, I'm Chad Sands. Thanks for listening. See you next time.
You've been listening to Celebrating Justice, presented by Cloudlex and the Trial Lawyers Journal. Remember, the stories don't end here. Visit triallawyersjournal.com to become part of our community and keep the conversation going. And for a deeper dive into the tools that empower personal injury law firms, visit cloudlex.com/TLJ to learn more.